Hello everyone, George DeSantis here with a look at the market for the week ending October 6th, 2017. And as usual, before we get into the charts, etc., let's read the disclaimer. Trading and investing has large potential rewards and large potential risks. This video presentation is designed for educational purposes only and is not a solicitation or advice to buy or sell any securities or the tradable instruments. You must be aware of the risks and be willing to accept them in order to invest in the markets. So consult a licensed professional investment advisor for investment advice, since I'm not one. Let's look at some charts. So here's a weekly chart of the S&P 500. This chart looks very bullish. It's still trending up nicely. The 4 EMA is above the 9 EMA. And both of them above the 30 weighted moving average. I mentioned last week that since we found support at the 30 weighted moving average here, that the market trended up, and it continues to do so. One caveat here is that we are now bumping up against the 2.72 Bollinger Band that my friend Alex uses, and I have decided to put it on here. So I won't be surprised to see a little bit of a correction next week. But notice that we had a target from this inverse head and shoulder pattern that we'll see more clearly on the daily chart. We had a target of 25.47. Well, would you believe we hit that target last week, and we now closed at 25.49.33. Looking further down the chart, we see RSI 12, and this is a weekly chart. So RSI 12 is most critical here. When RSI 12 is above this 60% line, we have a very strong trend. And we can see MACD trending up from below the zero line here. And now it's in bullish territory way above the zero line. And also at the bottom of the chart, this is a very good trend indicator. I've started using it recently again. Used to use it years ago. But the directional movement index, DI plus is above DI minus, which is the red line, and these dots represent the ADX. And the ADX, when it's rising, simply tells us there is a trend. And what we do is we determine whether it's an uptrend or downtrend by looking at the price chart. And so we can see clearly this thing is a really nice bull market we're in here. I mentioned, I think a year and a half, maybe a year or two ago, that this market reminds me very much, and that was back then, that it reminded me very much of the market that many of us made a lot of money in, which is in the 90s, mid-90s and so. And I still feel that way. There's probably a lot more on the upside, even though there's a lot of gloom and gloom around, and people are still holding a lot of cash. So we'll see how that develops. But let's look at the daily chart. The daily chart, I'll swing it in a little bit. We can see on the daily chart here, we had this support here. Actually, when we close a little bit below the 9 in this buy section here, buy area, the market took off again. And on Friday, we had an inside bar, or what is called a bullish harami. Sometimes they refer to it as a pregnant woman. I think I mentioned that before. So this is a bullish candlestick pattern. We see that Bollinger Band, the standard deviation of 2.72. We're not quite hitting that, so we have some room to the upside on the daily chart. Now on the RSI 12, we're above the 60% line. That's bullish. MACD is now trending up from the zero line. It came down a bit and closed above it, remained above it, and now is trending up above it. We can see that trend line below here, the directional movement index. The green line is the plus, DI plus, and the red line is directional index minus. And you can see how the ADX is trending up, the dotted line. So all in all, the market still looks very, very bullish. So let's get on to some individual stocks. So we'll start with the chart of Apple Computer. And as we can see here, the chart, we have this regression channel, the 90% line, the 50% and 10%. and Apple seems to rally from the 10% line to the 90, back down to 10, back up to 90, back down to 10, and now it seems to be in a position to rally from here. As we say, no guarantees from the management, but it does seem to be the case. And here is a seasonal chart of Apple, and if we find what's the best seasonal play here, we'll find that Apple tends to rally from October 7 to October 24th. That's a trade that has a 91%, 91.67 to be exact, win percentage with an average profit of 7%, a rating of 3.8, which is pretty good. And if you look here, you will see that the market, Apple actually has a record of 11 out of 12 years, giving us the 11 out of 12 years with a win percent, okay, or percentage. So I like Apple. I still own it, and I don't intend to sell it. I'm anticipating this move here. Let's look at something else. And here's a chart on Facebook. And what we can see here is that the pattern is somewhat similar to Apple. We came all the way down to the oversold region, and we started rallying up from there again. In fact, once we got to about 162, I think it is, the markets, Facebook started rallying again. There's a lot of room to the upside, and it could just likely continue to rally from here. If we look at the seasonal, what do we find? On the seasonal chart, very similar. October 10 to October 24, we get 100% move 5 out of 5 years, average profit 9% with an even higher rating than Apple had. Let's take a look at something else. Here's one of my favorites for long-term holding, and it's Visa. I like all the credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, and a few others. What we can see here is the earnings actually took a nice bump here, nice run up, and last quarter. And we can see now that the channel is very narrow. So if you want to hold it for a while, there is very little volatility. So you don't have to suffer large drawdowns with Visa, as you do perhaps with some other stocks. So right now it's at the 53% line, extreme. So it still has room at the top to rally from here. Let's look at the seasonals. On the seasonals, we have a trade in February, but if we look from this time of the year, we have a trade October 25th to November 8th, and that's a 77% win percentage. 7 out of 9 years it's been up, an average of 5%, with a rating of 2.9, which is not bad. And the last 3 years it's been up. Not a whole lot in 15 and 16, but in 14 it was up 18% during this time. Let's take a look at something else. Here's a chart of Netflix. Last week I recall saying that this is a good time to buy Netflix, or it may turn out to be a good time. Well, we had about an 11% move last week in Netflix. It's a beautiful move. And we are now at the overbought region at the 90% line, or close to it. So yeah, we're at 90%. So it's a long-term holding for me. I mean, I don't want to trade it that much, but what I could do here is sell some calls against it, which I'll probably do, covered calls. But in any case, if you want to look at the seasonals, we can see that. Take a look at the seasonals here. We have a trade in January, but if you want to see more recent trade, perhaps, we got a trade October 25th, November 8th. That's the buy-sell dates. And we have a 91% win percentage and 7% profit during that time with a rating of 5. So Netflix is another one of a key holding of mine, and I like it very much. So let's take a look at another one. Here's NVIDIA. NVIDIA was one of the best performers, if not the best, in the market last year. And this year it's already up quite a bit. So what we have here is that it's at 18%, the extreme level. And so there's room at the top. It can grow from here. Now, I'm not taking into consideration here earnings, reports, etc. So one has to be careful around earnings because these stocks can take a big hit, you know. But as it seems now, I still have some shares of NVIDIA, I'm holding it, and I am going to hold it as long as I see that it's continuing to maintain its performance. So let's take a look at the seasonals and see what we find here. Interesting seasonal chart. Nvidia has a good play in August, but then notice that from February to about the middle of February to July, August, it tends to be flat, and then it tends to begin to rise after that. And if we look at September going into the end of the year, there's a trade at October 27 to November 11. Many of those stocks we looked at seem to have trades around the same time. And so that may turn out to be a good trade too. It's an 83% win percentage, average profit of 6%, and rating of 3. So NVIDIA is another one that I hold. Won't hesitate to sell it if I have to, but I like it very much for the long term as well, because they're in the semiconductor business and they're really doing very well with a number of different areas. So let's keep that in mind. Here's Home Depot. I mentioned last week that we can notice that it had this huge run here. So it pulled back a little bit last week, not very much. But you see, the problem is it's already way extended beyond that 90% line, and historically, whenever it hits that 90% or so, it tends to regress, tends to come back, you see. So I won't be too inclined to buy it right here, but if you're a long-term holder, hey, you take a bit of a drawdown here, big deal. See, the hurricanes actually, of course, the rebuilding is going on there will benefit Home Depot, as we talked about before, and also United Rentals, where they rent all their tools. So let's take a look at the seasonals and see what we got here. The seasonal on Home Depot, we get a nice trade in November 20th to December 6th. So if you hold it, you're going into that season when Home Depot does well anyway. So it may not be a bad idea to hold it, even though it's somewhat extended now. So let's introduce one that we haven't talked about before. It's a stock that my friend Laura brought to my attention after she did some research on it. A couple of things. Zacks rates it number 1, which is their best rating. The stock, you can see the earnings increasing here, continually increasing, and price likewise increasing along with it. Right now, it's overbought, but you can see volatility is very tight here. It's not a very volatile stock. We bought some shares, and we've done so well recently. The stock has been up last week, particularly. It was up about 8 or 8.5%. Very nice piece of change. And thanks, Laura. Now, if we look at the seasonal, we can see that it has a seasonal trade in November, around the same time as many of the ones we looked at, November 20th to December 6th, and it's an 85% win percentage. So this one is in the space of the credit cards, etc. So we like this one a lot. Okay, bye-bye. We'll see another one. We look at one last one today. One that I own is the Trade Desk. Some time ago, actually on July 23rd, I sent you a list of stocks which included it. And what we see here is that it broke out of a triangle. You see this ascending triangle or even a symmetrical triangle. You can see that this line slides down here, this slides up, and it broke out. So it was up about 4.5% last week. Nice move for me. So this is one I like because it's just broken out, and the extreme is 67, so we have some room at the top. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope everyone is well, and I will celebrate 82 years on this fine planet tomorrow. And I can tell you I feel this as well as I did when I was about 10 years younger. Bye. Have a good weekend.